On a dark December night in 1972, a routine flight turned into a nightmare, and the haunting tale of Flight 401 began. The tragic crash of Eastern Airlines Flight 401 is not just a story of an aviation disaster, but one filled with eerie events that continue to baffle many to this day. It was December 29, 1972, at 8:30 p.m. The bustling John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York was alive with activity. Among the many flights scheduled that night was Eastern Airlines Flight 401, bound for Miami. This flight was supposed to be just another routine journey on a state-of-the-art Lockheed 1011 TriStar, one of the most advanced and largest planes of its time. Captain Bob Loft, a seasoned pilot with 30,000 hours of flight experience, was at the helm. Known for his calm demeanor and confidence, Captain Loft was the ideal leader for this flight. Alongside him were First Officer Bert Stockstill and Flight Engineer Don Repo, both experienced and highly respected in their roles. The crew also included Angelo Donato, an off-duty employee seated in the cockpit's fourth chair, a privilege of being an Eastern Airlines staff member. As the passengers boarded, excitement and anticipation filled the air. Families were heading to Miami for vacations, businessmen were traveling for work, and some were just looking forward to a warm escape from the chilly New York winter. Among them was Jerry Esco, a passenger so pleased with the service that he began drafting a thank you note to Eastern Airlines for the excellent flight experience even before the journey had concluded. The flight took off smoothly, and for 2 hours, everything seemed perfect. The plane soared through the night sky, and passengers relaxed, enjoying the flight. However, this sense of calm was about to be shattered. At 11:32 p.m., as Flight 401 approached Miami International Airport, Captain Loft and his crew prepared for landing. The plane had 3 landing gears, each equipped with a light in the cockpit to indicate if they were properly deployed. But as they lowered the landing gear, the light for the nose gear failed to illuminate. This tiny light bulb would become the catalyst for a series of unfortunate events. The crew immediately suspected a faulty bulb rather than an issue with the landing gear itself. They decided to raise and lower the gear again, hoping the light would come on, but it didn't. Concerned and unsure, Captain Loft contacted Miami Air Traffic Control, explaining the situation and requesting permission to circle the Everglades, a vast and desolate wetland area, while they attempted to resolve the issue. With the plane now on autopilot, maintaining a steady altitude and speed, the crew's focus turned entirely to the malfunctioning light. Flight Engineer Don Repo was sent to the L-hole, a small, cramped space below the cockpit, to visually check if the landing gear was down. Meanwhile, Captain Loft, First Officer Stockstill, and Angelo Donato tried to fix the light. As the crew's attention was consumed by this minor technical issue, no one noticed the autopilot had been inadvertently disconnected. Gradually, the plane began a slow descent. The dark expanse of the Everglades offered no visual cues to the crew or passengers that the aircraft was losing altitude. The gentle descent went unnoticed in the cabin, where gravity changes were minimal, and the darkness outside concealed any sense of danger. On the ground, in the same area, Robert Marquez and his friend were navigating the Everglades in a hot air balloon. Surrounded by darkness and with only a headlamp for light, they suddenly saw a bright flash in the sky, which quickly disappeared. Curious and concerned, they decided to investigate. Back on Flight 401, the crew remained oblivious to their perilous situation. They were focused on the malfunctioning light, unaware that their aircraft was descending steadily. Suddenly, the plane's descent became apparent, but it was too late. Flight 401 crashed into the Everglades, its impact softened slightly by the wetlands, but devastating nonetheless. The crash site was a scene of chaos and horror. The Everglades, a remote and swampy area, made rescue efforts extremely difficult. Robert Marquez and his friend were the first to arrive, driven by the flash they had seen. What they found was beyond comprehension: a scattered wreckage, the cries of injured passengers, and the eerie silence of those who had already perished. Marquez's headlamp revealed survivors trapped in the twisted remains of the plane. He and his friend worked tirelessly to pull people from the wreckage, including a man whose seat had buried him partially in the mud, his face barely above water. The man's burns were severe, and he struggled to breathe, but they managed to save him. Unfortunately, not everyone was so lucky. By the time the Coast Guard and other rescue teams arrived, many of the 176 passengers and crew had already succumbed to their injuries. The final death toll was 99, including Captain Loft, First Officer Stockstill, and Flight Engineer Repo. However, 77 people survived, many with severe injuries. The aftermath of the crash left a lasting scar on the survivors and the families of those who had lost their lives. Investigations into the crash revealed the tragic irony: the landing gear was down and locked correctly. The problem was the light bulb, a minor malfunction that had diverted the crew's attention and led to the fatal crash. Eastern Airlines faced intense scrutiny, and changes were made to improve safety protocols and training programs to prevent such disasters in the future. But the story of Flight 401 didn't end with the crash. In the months and years that followed, Eastern Airlines employees began reporting strange occurrences. These were mere rumors; they were detailed accounts from credible sources. In March 1973, just 3 months after the crash, a flight attendant named Jenny was assigned to Flight 318, another Lockheed 1011 TriStar. During the flight, Jenny and her colleague Denise experienced something unsettling. While working in the plane's lower galley, they felt an overwhelming presence, as if someone else was there with them. Despite checking thoroughly, they found no one. This was just the beginning. Reports of ghostly apparitions started to surface. Crew members and passengers claimed to have seen the spirits of Captain Loft and Flight Engineer Repo. One such incident occurred when a flight attendant saw a man in an Eastern Airlines captain's uniform sitting among the passengers. When she approached him to ask for his name, he vanished before her eyes. On another occasion, a maintenance worker saw Don Repo's reflection in an oven door in the galley. Repo reportedly warned him about a faulty electrical circuit, potentially saving lives by preventing another disaster. These encounters were not isolated. They were experienced by multiple credible witnesses, including pilots, flight attendants, and even passengers. Eastern Airlines' response to these reports was one of denial and suppression. The company dismissed the stories, attributing them to stress and imagination. Employees who insisted on discussing their experiences were often sent to psychologists or faced termination. Despite this, the stories persisted, whispered among the staff, and occasionally leaked to the press. One particularly chilling account involved a flight to Miami. A flight attendant named Sis noticed an unaccounted passenger dressed in a captain's uniform. When she approached him and he didn't respond, she brought the pilot, George, to investigate. As George knelt down to speak to the man, he recoiled in shock, recognizing him as Captain Bob Loft. The apparition disappeared before their eyes, witnessed by 6 passengers who corroborated the story. The eerie sightings continued for years, always linked to planes that had parts salvaged from the wreckage of Flight 401. The ghostly apparitions of Captain Loft and Don Repo seemed to haunt these aircraft, a spectral reminder of the tragic flight. These stories became part of the aviation folklore, adding a layer of supernatural intrigue to the already tragic tale of Flight 401. In 1974, Eastern Airlines took a drastic step. Without public explanation, they removed all salvaged parts from their fleet of Lockheed 1011 TriStars. Remarkably, after this decision, the reports of hauntings ceased. The removal of these parts seemed to put an end to the supernatural occurrences, but the legend of Flight 401 lived on. The story of Flight 401 is a poignant reminder of the fragile line between routine and disaster in aviation. It also highlights the human tendency to seek meaning in tragedy, whether through improvements in safety protocols or through stories of ghosts and hauntings. For the families of the victims, the survivors, and the employees of Eastern Airlines, Flight 401 remains a haunting chapter in history. As we reflect on this story, it's important to remember the lives lost and the lessons learned. The tragedy of Flight 401 led to significant changes in aviation safety, making the skies safer for everyone. Yet, the haunting tales remind us that some scars never fully heal, lingering in the shadows as a testament to the lives forever changed by that fateful night. What do you think about the haunting tales of Flight 401? Do you believe in such paranormal occurrences, or do you think they were simply manifestations of stress and trauma? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with others who might be interested in true stories and mysteries. And stay tuned for our next video, where we uncover more fascinating and mysterious tales from history.